Hey guys, welcome back to another Freaky Fast Friday episode where we give you the scoop on a case in 30 minutes or less. So sit back, make yourself a drink or a cup of tea, and join us for this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another Freaky Fast Friday episode. This week we're going to throw things back to kind of the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, in Poitiers, France. Ooh, fancy. I had to look up the the pronunciation of this place in France because
it's spelled Poitiers,
but Poitiers.
Oh, actually, that kind of makes sense.
That's good pronunciation. Plot twist: I speak fluent French now. As a disclaimer, this is a really old case, so there's not very many primary sources. A lot of what we know is like really old newspaper clippings, and a lot of the information I got was from like archives of true crime like cases and like archives of like really old like history websites. Mm-hmm. I found out about this case on r/true crime and kind of just became really interested because I found the picture that if anybody has heard of this case, they've seen this picture, and it's basically of Blanche Monnier. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it, Monnier, after being secluded in an attic for 25 years.
Wow, I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah. So, Mademoiselle Blanche Monnier was a high-bred socialite born to a family who came from old money. Her mother, Louise, had won an award from the Committee of Good Works for her contributions, probably monetary contributions, to the city of Paris. She died 15 days after being put in jail. She admitted fully to locking her daughter in an attic.
For 25 years?
Yeah, and she died before she ever stood trial.
That's weird that she died so quickly.
Blanche was old. She was like in her 70s.
That's why she finally admitted it. She's like,
gonna die. That's not even how she got caught. So Blanche was known for her beauty and basically had suitors lining up, asking to marry her. She was actually 25 by the time that she was locked away, and she hadn't decided on anybody essentially, and I'm sure that pissed her mom off a little bit, just based on the time period. I'm sure it didn't make her mother very happy that
she was 25 and single.
Well, she was like, she's beautiful. Like, you can look pictures up of her like before all of this happened. Like, I can see why a lot of people were asking for her hand in marriage. But by 25, she had completely set her heart on marrying a poor lawyer. Nobody with a fancy name, nobody with like money,
land or
money or assets or anything like that. Of course, her mother highly disapproved and forbid her from marrying him. They argued often about this, leading up to the day in 1976 when Blanche's...
Or was it 19?
No, it was 18.
In 1876.
They argued a lot about this leading up to the day in 1876 when Louise locked Blanche in an attic. Blanche's mother, Louise, intended on letting her out when Blanche kind of gave up on the whole marrying the lawyer thing. It seems like maybe she originally was gonna let her out. But Blanche stuck to her guns. Like, she essentially never was like, hey, I'll marry whoever you want me to.
Mm-hmm. Good for her.
I mean, it didn't do her any favors, but...
Right. I mean, she could have just said that and then ran away.
So Blanche went on to spend the next 25 years of her life in a padlocked room in the attic of their home on 21 Rue de la Visitation.
Fancy.
I think that's how you say it. She survived solely on table scraps that her mother would give her.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah, and my thinking is like, she probably deteriorated really quickly. Mm-hmm. So even if she got to the point where she was like, oh, I'll marry who you want, she was probably not healthy enough to marry anybody. It was also believed that due to the state she was in, this is going to get a little bit gross, so skip ahead if you don't want to listen to this. It was also believed that she because of the like physical state that the room was in, that she had took up autocoprophagy, the practice of eating one's own feces. This coprophagia is often described in schizophrenic patients, but it is also well documented as co-occurring with many extreme mental illnesses, which she likely had from social isolation.
Yeah, I was going to say, after you've been locked away for a long time, you would definitely start to develop
It would be so traumatizing.
Yeah. Well, and it's possible,
especially by your own mother,
doing it like for nutrition.
Maybe.
I mean, it's
just
possible.
Because she was so hungry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, most of the time coprophagia is seen as a paraphilia.
I don't think it was like that. I think that she was hungry.
Or she had deteriorated extremely as far as mental and she did. She did deteriorate mentally a lot and physically. While she was locked away, her lover suddenly died in 1885. The lawyer died in 1885, so I'm assuming she didn't know this. Yeah. And even if she did, she might have stuck to her guns still. Her mother...
Or it might have made everything worse, and then she...
Yeah. Her mother and her brother, Marcel, both pretended to mourn her.
She had died?
Yeah. Like, publicly, they just pretended to mourn her. And they went on with their lives while Blanche sat in an attic and eventually dwindled to 55 pounds.
Oh my god.
On May 23rd, 1901, the Attorney General of Paris received an anonymous letter that said the following: Monsieur Attorney General, this is a quote. This has been translated from French, obviously. I have the honor to inform you of an exceptionally serious occurrence. I speak of a spinster who is locked up in Madame Monnier's house, half-starved and living on a putrid litter for the past 25 years. In a word, in her own filth. The police decided to go to the home and saw the curtains moving as Louise looked out a window at them, but nobody answered the door. So they broke it down.
They don't mess around in Paris.
They're like, bam, bam.
They were immediately met with a horrendous smell when they got to the top of the stairs where the attic was.
Oh my god.
There was a skeleton-like woman on the rotten straw mattress. It was Blanche. She had not seen another human in a quarter of a century.
So she wouldn't even see her mother?
No.
She would shove stuff under the door.
I mean, obviously I don't know the logistics of it, but yeah, she hadn't seen any sunlight. I'm assuming that this window or this room didn't have any windows.
If it was an attic, yeah.
Or it had a very small window.
Or a small stained glass.
Maybe.
They're not allowed to light comes through.
Mm-hmm.
She was surrounded by food scraps and excrement, which were giving off a smell so bad that the police could hardly stay in the room long enough to investigate. So they could barely stand the smell. So it's terrible to think that somebody was living in there. A sketch that appeared in a newspaper story about the situation, Blanche is shown in a small dark room surrounded by mice, her legs and face so thin that you could see the bones through her skin. So it's a pretty realistic drawing. I think back then they didn't, because they had photographs, but you couldn't put a photograph in a newspaper.
It also probably wasn't as convenient to get a camera somewhere to...
I'm surprised.
Well, there is a photo of her in the room when she was first discovered. It's pretty much the same. She has this really long, brittle looking dark hair. It's super, super long.
It looks like it's out of a horror movie.
Yeah, super long. It's been growing for 25 years.
I'm surprised that she lived this long.
Yeah.
The way they're describing it is she's basically a skeleton. There's...
Yeah.
55 pounds. That's crazy.
In the picture, her hip bone, it looks triangular. It looks like just a pelvis bone.
Wow.
There's skin over it, obviously, but it's pretty, graphic, honestly. She also, in this picture, this is the one that I saw on a Reddit thread and kind of made me decide to do this case. She has these dark spots near her eyes, dark, not on her skin, but it's something on top of her skin. This could be sores from being in her excrement, but it also could be food and or feces. Because I can't even imagine the smell, to be honest. I don't have any like reference point for that, so like I can't even think
Well,
of.
and I would have to wonder if Louise, who was Blanche's mother, could smell it.
They said they could smell it when they entered the bottom of the house.
Well, they could smell
when
it
they
once
got to
they
the top.
got to the door,
But
because it was the attic.
But I mean, smell travels pretty easily, and so I could imagine.
To it.
And how disgusting would you have to be as a human being to like be okay with that?
This
knowing that it was
crazy.
your daughter rotting in your attic. Yeah.
Like, because, I mean, every mother disciplines their children. And, like, I could see, like, sending her to timeout and then, like, reconsidering, like, if they were in the midst of a fight when she did this. But
Kind of take a break from it.
Yeah, like, hey, let's take a breather.
She, for 25 years, made the decision that... And so part of me wonders if at some point it had been, like, too long. And they're like, oh, now we can't let her out. She's going to tell somebody, you know?
Well, so, on, like, a tangent to that, Louise the mother, died before trial, but Blanche's brother Marcel stood trial for his involvement in the kidnapping and captivity. To the horror of everyone who knew of... So in France, she was called La Séquestrée des Poitiers. Everybody that knew about this case was really shocked when Marcel was acquitted. He was acquitted because technically she could have left at any time, is essentially why he wasn't.
Wait,
put in
Blanche?
jail.
They think Blanche could have been?
They're saying, like, technically at any time she could have been like, okay, Mom, I give up. And then she could have just run.
But, what? Huh?
Yeah, it doesn't really take away from the fact that they still falsely imprisoned her, you know? Like,
yeah.
That's still, I mean, this was the early 1900s, so, like,
and not to mention, yeah, I mean, that's also a good point, but not to mention, like, the mental abuse that, like, even if she got out, would she be able to make it that very far away? Would she be able to survive? Would she be kicked out of her house? Like,
well, I wonder what point, because you're right, it's surprising that she survived that long with almost no food. Like,
her mom had to be giving her, like, just enough.
Yeah.
But it would have been horrible still, but different if they had locked her in the house, like, just locked her in when they left.
Yeah.
But they locked her in the attic with no...
Like, by
didn't
herself.
feed her
she didn't
properly.
have any social interaction.
She didn't have food. She didn't get to see anybody. She didn't have, like, a designated place to use the bathroom. Like, it was...
weird. I can't believe that's how they ruled this.
This is absolute torture.
Well, and we can only assume that her mother probably would have gotten the same
trial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
probably.
the same thing would have happened, you know? So, Blanche Monnier spent the last 12 years of her life in a mental hospital in...
So at this
it's
time...
spelled B-O-I-S, but Bois.
25. Maybe? She was about 25 when she went in.
Yeah,
two.
So she...
Then another 25, so then she was 50, so then she was 62 when she died.
Yeah, that sounds about right. She spent it in a mental hospital. She was diagnosed with coprophilia, exhibitionism, anorexia nervosa, and schizophrenia.
Interesting, though, because anorexia nervosa is usually diagnosed to people who are willingly
this was 12 years later,
withholding food.
I think that because of the trauma,
she was traumatized. Yeah, exactly.
She probably was choosing not to eat very much.
She didn't
when
know
her body
how.
probably also didn't want her to eat very much.
Well, this is like a terrible way to like relate it, but like when people were liberated from concentration camps during World War II, a lot of them had been starved for so long that as soon as they started eating too much, like, it killed them because their body wasn't used to having to use those muscles to digest anything. It's actually, I mean, it's crazy how long that the human body can live without food.
Proper nutrition.
Like, as long as you're getting water, like, you can live a long time without food or without proper amounts of food.
Nutrition. Mm-hmm.
So, all these years later, this story is crazier than fiction, in my opinion. Like, who would think this up, right?
Yeah.
Like, this would be like I would never read this book ever.
Somebody to come up with this story would have to be like mentally ill
Yeah.
themselves. Mm-hmm.
Everyone, I think, knows the more recent version of this story, and that's Jeannie Wily. Jeannie Wily, I learned about in a normal psychology class. She was the girl who was like locked up from she was like 20 months old when she got locked up, and they found her around age 13. So she was a lot younger than Blanche, but same situation. Like, her father kept her locked in a room, and nobody else in the household was allowed to talk to her.
Right, this is the one where they showed up and like she couldn't speak any of English.
Yeah, she didn't develop any.
She had she would just like make weird noises to the police officers.
She didn't develop any language, and she also didn't really she didn't know how to regulate her emotions, and she didn't have a lot of like all of these characteristics that she would have acquired through a healthy childhood, or even like a semi-healthy childhood. Like, she was straight up like in a room by herself all the time. And not to mention, she, in a similar way, there was like reports that her father like chained her to a toilet, so she had to sit on the toilet for a long time. And I don't want to get too deep into this case because it's not the same, but Jeannie Wily was released at 13. Like, they found her, and she was doing really well because she was with therapists up until age 18. But at age 18, she was reinstitutionalized in a more, I would assume, severe environment, and this greatly deteriorated the progress she had made as far as like language,
because it was
and emotion
similar. That's very sad. And
this is due entirely to the medical professionals at this new institution, because they were not, obviously it wasn't a good environment. So and she pretty much reverted completely to like no language. Another feral child that is also coincidentally in France, but is like a pretty well-known one in the psychological world, is the Wild Boar. The Wild Boy of Aveyron, also known as Victor. I don't know if this is his real name. This was like mid-1800s, so there's probably not quite as much known about him, but he was studied by psychologists at the time. He lived in the wild on his own for about 7 years. So he, in a lot of ways, like, had he could speak, but he like wasn't used to speaking to other humans. So I don't know. This is all just to add that like social isolation for any amount of time can really mess up your mental and emotional and physical state, obviously too, but like humans are such social creatures, so like it's
similar to like sugar gliders. The pet, they can't be alone. They'll die of like basically mental illness, being depressed, because they can't be without social interaction. And like it just like goes to show that it's a very animalistic similarity that we have, that we need social interaction to like not only thrive but to like live
and be like a functioning member of society.
Functionally live.
And it's crazy to think that her mother did this to her.
I mean, that's possibly like the most traumatizing part about the whole situation, is that it was her own mother. And also I can't believe that she was 25 by the time that she was like, when she was put in there. Like, I mean, just imagine like telling, obviously that
your adult child like go in this room,
go in this room and you're never gonna come out and
listen to me.
Is there any more info on what kind of state she was in after she left?
She never recovered. She was extremely schizophrenic at this point. She was hallucinating, which, being locked in a room without anybody other talking to you, it makes sense that eventually she started hearing things and having delusions.
To try to like make yourself feel better, kind
you
of.
Also
have a conversation with somebody.
Would be talking to people in your head, and like almost like daydreaming, like picturing like going out and doing like regular things, because you wouldn't have experienced that in so long. And I think it's different for her in comparison to the other two children that you mentioned, because she had already grown up. And so she knew what it was like to have all these things, and then they got like all taken from her.
Well, and she was an incredibly social person. Like, she's
a socialite.
Like a socialite, basically.
She was part of the Paris social scene, so, and I mean, it's, I guess, what was your original question? Oh, you asked what state she was in when she finally got out. Yeah, she didn't really recover. She was in a sanitarium till she died. She probably died pretty prematurely, I would assume, from the serious, like, issues that she had.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure she had a lot of medical...
Malnutrition, anorexia. I wonder kind of if she developed, like, some kind of, like, other medical condition related to the malnutrition.
Like infection from
maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, her immune system was probably deteriorated.
It actually is interesting that she didn't die from an infection of some kind, because people died from infections all the time.
Yeah, let alone if you were barely eating anything and then eating your own feces. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you were
isolated from everything. So she wasn't exposed to all of these diseases and viruses that we were being exposed to. I mean, not us, obviously. But also, I mean, anorexia kills people regardless of being in these extreme conditions. And so, I mean, it's crazy that she lived that long, and also almost not, and I don't want to say awful, but like it's kind of sad that she lived that long. Like, if I were her, I would have wished to have not made it that long.
Sad. Yeah, this is the picture.
Is it a drawing?
It's a drawing, yeah.
Like, honestly, this looks like something you would see in a horror film.
Literally.
But she was so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, look at her hair. Like, it's, like, bang.
It's brittle, yeah.
It's, like, broken off because of malnutrition. It's crazy that she even has that much
It's
hair
interesting that it
based on
didn't
her
start falling out, yeah.
Because that's a really common symptom of anorexia nervosa is hair loss. Do they know at all who sent the anonymous tip?
No.
So probably, like, a neighbor.
Maybe.
I mean, it's possible that it could have been the brother.
What if it was? So my theory about who sent in the letter, I think it could either have been the mother or the brother, but I'm wondering if the reason why they did it is because, like I mentioned earlier, what if they had kept her in there for a little bit, just for the mom specifically, to, like, punish her, and then it got to a point where it had gone on too long and they knew they weren't going to be able to let her out and, like, not be caught?
Do you know what I mean? Who thinks of it like that?
I don't know. I mean, clearly the lady was deranged enough to lock her kid in an attic and not feed her anything. Yeah. So, I don't know. I feel like it's very likely that it's either the mom or the brother that sent the letter in, especially if they did a good job of actually, like, hiding her, because the mother died shortly after. So maybe she was going to die and she needed to, like, kind of admit to everything that she had done. I don't know. That is a brutal story. It's craziness.
So she did recover slightly and she gained back some of the weight, but the anorexia at that point was probably too severe.
Also, your not reproductive, your digestive organs, like, deteriorate after a certain period of time.
If so she wasn't regularly using them.
Her stomach was probably tiny. I mean, this woman probably hadn't menstruated in years. Like, malnutrition, I mean, like, the things it does to your body. You can, like, you lose your sight, you lose your hair, your skin, like, becomes, like, destroyed. I know it's horrible to think about, but I wonder how long she would have survived had she not been found. Like, would she have survived this long?
Around the same time? Or...
Wouldn't she have eventually gotten some kind of infection?
I don't know, because she wouldn't have been exposed to the same things that a normal person would have.
But there's so much bacteria that because there was rats in there.
Oh, then yeah.
Rats carry a ton
I don't know how she made it that long.
Diseases, and I mean, your excrement isn't necessarily clean. Like, if it sits there for long enough, bacteria will grow, so. It's interesting she didn't get some kind of infection, especially in, like, her eyes or something, because I'm sure she was touching,
Do they know how long, like, how do they know that she was eating her own feces?
They're theorizing. That's a theory.
Okay.
Because of the state she was found in. I mean, obviously they didn't have the technology at the time to, like, look at her stomach contents or anything. Also, she was still alive, so I think it was more of a theory that she was likely because of her mental deterioration. So,
gotcha. That makes sense.
All right, guys, that's all I've got for this week's really disgusting episode.
Good thing it was a freaky fast one because
yeah,
it was
seriously, it's just like one of those cases that's like, it's very unique, like not in a good way, but I mean, a lot of people don't know about it.
Well, it's very
also
severe. Like, it's like the
it's
absolute
extreme.
most
it's so
severe
extreme.
case
like,
of this I've ever heard of.
Like I said, I would not really care to watch a movie or a book about this, honestly.
Yeah, no.
Like, it's really horrific.
No, thank you.
I feel like it'd be traumatizing just to...
Well, and even though she didn't die, like, it was
It's almost worse that she
Yes.
didn't die.
Exactly, that's what I was
And
saying.
continued to live
Well,
through
and
that.
who knows? She might have lived like 30 more years. I mean,
If they hadn't found
she
her.
died 12 years after being released, so at the most she maybe would have lived like 15 because of how like sickly she was. But yeah, 25 years. Like, dude, I get bored like sitting by myself at work.
Yeah.
Like, I like need constant interaction. I mean, maybe that says a lot about me, but
No, it's the same for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
It's
we're
not...
such social creatures,
Mm-hmm.
humans are. That's why, like, solitary confinement in prisons, like, that's, like, pretty
traumatic.
Yeah, like...
A lot of people, after they go in solitary confinement, end up being, like, either more violent after they're released,
It
or...
doesn't do what,
Yeah.
like, what they're intending on it doing, for
Mhm.
sure, yeah. Thanks so much for listening this week, guys. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, watch the video version of this podcast. You can also find us on Instagram at Who What Where Podcast. We're also on Facebook. Make sure to follow us on both of those. That'd be great. You can always leave a comment. We would love to hear what you think about this case. And does it remind you of any other cases? Again, it's pretty crazy. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of even fiction stories that are crazier than this. So, but we'll be back soon. So make sure to follow us on social media. We'll see you next time.